So in this video, I thought I would do a little bit of musing about the Dhyani Buddhas, or the five Buddhas, or the five Tathagatas. I must admit from the outset that I don't know a whole lot about this, and so if you'll forgive me, I may just sort of wet your whistle a little bit, so to speak, regarding this concept and leave it to you to go research further and to figure out, what of the blathering that I do is fairly accurate and what needs to be corrected on the basis of your own looking into the matter. The other thing is, my pronunciations are probably going to be quite poor, and that's certainly something that I apologize for in advance. But, I was fascinated by this esoteric, or I think eventually Tibetan concept within Buddhism of the fact, I think it is, that the cosmos is broken up into these five areas, and there are these five families, so to speak. And of course, I think this is all in the realm of the so-called Sambhogakaya, or bliss body, or spiritual level, what I call or think about as the spiritual level or cosmic level of Buddhahood, where, these are not, sort of concrete historical figures, so to speak, but each one represents certain attributes. And interestingly, I think that each one is associated with certain also human characteristics, both on the one hand of a negative sort and on the other hand of a positive sort. So they kind of reflect the complexity of us human beings as we sort of try to understand ourselves in some kind of psychological, emotional, cosmic, spiritual sense. So in this constellation, which I did a drawing one time to sort of just put down some of the things that I was reading about them, and I'll make reference to that, but in the center, and I think the one who's considered to be the primary Buddha is Dainichi Buddha, or Vairochana Buddha. I think it's Vairochana in Sanskrit and Dainichi in Japanese. And within esoteric Buddhism, which I think is referred to as Shingon Buddhism, and this was largely also articulated by Kukai, that it evolved over into Tantric Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, that within those forms of Buddhism, Vairochana is the primary Buddha, who is looked to for wisdom and toward whom devotees focus their energies and their sort of worshipful activities, if you will. Interestingly, if you ever go to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, they have a room there that we visited that is darkish, not well lit on the basis that that's how Japanese temples are. And so this was sort of made in the form of a Japanese temple, and right in the middle was a statue of Dainichi. I can't replicate just from memory what his mudra is, so to speak, but it's something along this line where the fingers are sort of upright. And I'm not sure, again, what the meaning of that is, but in any case, at that particular museum, just as another sidebar, is that there's also one of Amida Buddha. And of course, Amitabha Buddha is one of the five Buddhas. He is over to the west, the western part of the universe, of course. And to the east is Akshobhya, which we sometimes hear about in some of the scriptures. And then you have in the north Amoghasiddhi Buddha. Amoghasiddhi, or Fukojuju Buddha. And then in the south is Ratnasambhava Buddha, or Hoshu Buddha. So those are the five, and I'm going to say just a little bit about each one in terms of, supposedly, as I was just poking around in this, and I haven't re-reviewed it or done any additional research. So again, I'll leave that to you. But Dainichi is associated on the negative side, if we identify with him, I guess, with sloth, isolation, and indifference, whereas on the positive side is spaciousness and openness. And each one of these Buddhas has a particular color that they're associated with, and for Dainichi it's white. And then they have certain symbols or emblems or or implements that are associated with them. And for Dainichi, it's lions and a wheel. And these are also considered to be part of particular families. So he's the head of the Buddhist family, and so he is primary in a sense to the other four. Amogatsuki in the north, his negative attributes there are envy, jealousy, busyness, and perfection, whereas on the positive side there's energy, activity, and achievement. His color is green, and the implements that he's associated with are the Garuda, which is a mythical creature, and the double dorje, which is that implement that you often see in Tibetan statues, and it's often seen in association with also the bell as being kind of the complementary type of object within iconography. At the south, Ratnasambhava, whose color is yellow, is associated with greediness, pride, and self-indulgence on the negative side, and with impartial giving, solidarity with all beings on the positive side. And his objects are the dorje, and he's a part of the so-called jewel family. Akshabhaya is, I believe his color may be gray, I'm not sure, but the negatives on his part are anger, hatred, and criticism, and on the positive side is non-judgmental clarity and imperturbability. So his mascots, if you will, or objects are the elephant and the scepter, and he's part of the Vajra family. Now, Amitabha, I'll put a little more focus on since that's the one that I focus on. And it's interesting because to the extent that these are kind of templates for aspects of our psychological makeup, his negatives are obsessive attachment and possessiveness. And I have to confess that I can really identify with that. My sweetheart says I have the collector gene, and so even though the Four Noble Truths teaches us very clearly that craving is the source of suffering, I can't seem to have the wherewithal to practice the Eightfold Path to a sufficient degree to allow me to transcend that sense of possessiveness that causes me to act in the world in such a way that I accumulate stuff and have a hard time sort of letting it go. On the positive side, proper comprehension is the attribute that's associated with Amitabha, and he's part of the Padma family, and I believe the color associated with him is red. Interestingly, he also was associated with strong emotion, and even though most of the time I present in a pretty calm manner, I can very much associate with the idea of experiencing and expressing strong emotion, which some of you will notice sometimes when I'm reciting sutras or other things that I get a little carried away in terms of my degree of drama that I know some of you don't like, whereas others don't mind it a bit. So those are the things related to the Dhyani Buddhas. And by the way, in terms of Amitabha, his objects associated with him are the peacock and the lotus. So anyway, again, I don't have a lot of knowledge about the five Tathagatas or the five Dhyani Buddhas, but I wanted to at least bring it to your attention so that if you have an interest, if this piques your interest, it's something you can look into in more depth and maybe learn something about it and dive into the world of the symbolism associated with our wonderful Buddhist tradition. Namandabs. Namandabs. Namandabs.